Okay, so before we dive into today, any questions about last time or about the screencast? I do hope that we will get started with treatises today. That's not the first thing we're going to discuss, but as I mentioned in the first class, the classes can be kind of fluid, and I am fairly certain that this one is going to go over into next class. Don't worry, I've built in time, so we will cover everything. But as I said, I am hopeful we will at least get started with treatises and finish off next class. Okay, so as Mandy Patinkin likes to say on Homeland previously on our show, so previously in our class, we had talked about getting started with secondary sources. A couple of you in a couple of the two, one of or both of the two screencasts, very perceptively asked, where can I start? How do I know where to start? By the way, when you do ask questions in the screencast, I reply, but you have to log into TED-Ed. I will also make sure to discuss them in class. If I don't, please ask. So where do I start? I wish I could tell you, always start an encyclopedia, or always start an ALR, or treatises, or Google. Honestly, it depends on your topic. And it's a bit of a catch-22 because you don't know the best place to start till you've already done the research and found the good resource. So again, I wish I could tell you where to start. But I would say that the guidance I would give you is start out. You might want to start on Google because it's free and it's easy and there's nothing wrong with either of those. But as I will continue to say, probably just about every class for the remainder of the semester, don't stop there. But beyond that, I would say it also depends upon what the issue is, what your knowledge base is. If you know zero about it, you might want to start in encyclopedia. You hopefully might want to, if you know your jurisdiction and there is a jurisdictional encyclopedia and you have access to it without it costing a lot of money, like New York Jurisprudence, which some of you looked at last time, that is a lot of times where I will send attorneys who come in for research help at the reference desk. I'll send them to the print, although actually I can also send them to Westlaw, and we'll talk about that when we talk about pricing next time. We discovered, so that's a short, well, it's not really a short answer, so perhaps encyclopedias, but not necessarily. We're going to take a look at a couple of different types of resources today, but as I said, we're going to sort of catch up from where we were. So we had discovered actually those encyclopedias, AmJur wasn't that great. New York Jur was we didn't give that a great rating, but it was slightly higher than AmJur. But the ALR folks really liked what they found. As I mentioned last time, a lot of law librarians say, attorneys never look at ALR, which I take their word for it because they work with the attorneys, but it's a shame because every now and again you find something really helpful, like what we found for our issue. So we learned a little bit about ERISA and preemption, and the very good question came up, well, if it's preempted, why do we go forward? And I suggested, well, we're not that expert in it yet, but also another answer that I thought of later, which I want to bring up now, and a very important answer too, is that, okay, that's our initial sense, but maybe we want to investigate what the parameters of that preemption is. Maybe there are exceptions. Again, we're sort of beginners at this, some of us a little more experience in understanding and learning about ERISA preemption than others. So maybe there are exceptions. Maybe there are rules that our particular client and her facts might fall into. Excuse me. So this is where we left off. So what we're going to dive into initially today are what librarians call current awareness sources. I wouldn't worry too much about the lingo, but basically a lot of it is what's available on the web. Current awareness, like newspapers, the regular good old New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, whatever your favorite source is. Again, online is great. Also blogs, again, whatever you find on the Google search that might be useful. But as all of our research is migrating not to the web and online, but not only just online to sources we know and trust like Lexis and Westlaw, but to whatever Google pulls up. There's a very important concept that you always need to bear in mind, and I am going to turn to one of my favorite comedians, Stephen Colbert, assuming he comes up again. We'll get him up one way or the other, I promise. If we have to refresh, we'll refresh. Sometimes it comes up right away, and sometimes you have to refresh. So we may have to sit through an ad. Now he's going to talk about Wikipedia, but I'm going to generalize this to really any source on the web. Hang on. But I think it makes the point. And of course he's talking about Wikipedia, and at that time, it's all right with you, I'm going to turn this off so I don't have to talk over it. At that time, anybody could go into Wikipedia and apparently they had quite a problem with that particular web page after this episode. It's a little bit different now. You have to sort of be vetted by Wikipedia, but the point being not just Wikipedia, but anywhere on the web, anybody can put anything up. I know a teeny little bit of HTML, and I have actually put up web pages because I work here at Hofstra, and they're generous enough to give me some server space, but I could pay for it, and it's not that much anywhere. And I could load up the laws of New York or the US code, and I could just add the word not whenever I felt like it, or just change it to make the law is the way my reality instead of what it is. Now, I have plenty of other things to use my time with, so and I don't know that there are too many people with that idea either, but the point being that anybody can put up a web page, and what you need to do, whatever you're looking at the web, is to think about the source, think about the reliability, think about the possible biases, whether it's a political bias or any other kind of bias. Think about what the purpose is of why the person is putting up the web page. Are they trying to sell something? Themselves, their services, a product? And might that skew it? And again, think about where the source and what the reliability is. So let's dive in. So here we are at Google. Whoa! I'm going to get rid of the sound now so we don't have to deal with that again. Do you want voice search? I must have hit something. Okay, anyway, getting back to our Google search. So one of the searches that we talked about when we did our issue spotting was pretty much what I typed in here. Does that comport with your memories? Pretty close. I could make it a little more sophisticated by putting quotes around health maintenance organization, but I wanted to get the basic concepts in there, the liability, the HMO. Might want to add other concepts. Remember, we discovered managed care was one of the terms used, where HMO is a type of managed care. But starting here, and the wonderful thing about Google is you can search as many times with as many variations. You don't have to worry about anything other than your time. So if we're all okay with this search, and I am open to suggestions if you think we should add, let's just take a quick look at our results. And the first thing I suggest is just take a look at, why does it keep on doing that? Is to take a look and see what the URLs are. So .edus, so that's telling me that's an educational institution. So okay, that's going to give me a little more comfort level. I still don't know what this is or who wrote it. Here's a PDF. I might want to take a look. That first title certainly sounds promising. And the only downside to taking a look is the time it takes to load. And I have to say it, this happens to me quite a bit, where you think, oh, that sounds really good, and you click and you get the URL not found. So there's a disadvantage to Google as opposed to some of the other resources we talk about, but obviously it's easy enough to go back as we just did. Excuse me. What I see down here is NIH.gov. Now I happen to know that's National Institutes of Health, but if you didn't know that, you still see the .gov, so you know it's government. Okay, government, obviously government can have its biases too, but again, for the most part, going to be a fairly reliable source. So we're going to want to take a look and see what I can learn here. Also, what I want to do, very important for any source I look at, and we talked about this a little bit, I think the first class, is update, update, and update. Now, granted, without the books, you don't have to worry about those annoying pocket parts anymore on the web, but you can see we've got something that's nearly 10 years old here. Maybe it's perfectly good, but I want to know that. I apologize. I want to know that it's 10 years old because I now know, okay, I'm going to learn the concepts here, but I'm going to make sure any citations I get, I'm going to make sure that they're still up to date. I'm going to see if there are any later amended statutes or cases that I need to look at. And I'm also going to take a look at references. So here I'm saying, here's a case, Aetna v. Davila. Here's another reference to that case. This is the Cornell website, Legal Information Institute, so that's actually going to be the case itself. But I might even just learn a little bit from my search without even reading the results, saying, I wonder if that case is important. I might want to jot that one down to come back to at another time. Okay, so that's basically the Wikiality concept of looking at your Google results. And honestly, you want to apply that principle to just about anything you look at, especially on the free web, because again, anybody with a little sense of mischievousness can put up anything they want. But even when you're on reliable sources like Lexis Westlaw and the web, you certainly want to take a look and see how old it is, update, update, and update. And also, if you can, get a sense of who the authors are. That's going to be a little more difficult, and I don't recommend spending hours researching authors when you've got real research that you have to do. But at least think about the date. Okay, so that's the overall concept of Wikiality. Again, excuse me. Another way to use Google is to be a little more targeted, and rather than have Google find anything out there, see if you can find more specialized resources within Google, like blogs. Blogs are a great source because people who are really interested, and again, you have to figure out their biases, but people who are really interested, sorry about that, I don't know why that keeps on happening, are going to post. So what I sometimes like to do is take my subject and see what blogs are out there. And again, Google's great for that. ERISA blogs. And I scan down here, so I see Proskauer. So that's a law firm, if you don't already know. You probably do. Okay, so law firm, they're going to have some expertise in the law. They also may be trying to sell me their expertise, but knowing that, I'll still look at it and see what they have to offer. Here's a really long one. I have no idea what it is, but I might take a look if it looks promising. And you just go through. One thing I like to see is when I see an organization or a publication that I recognize, like the ABA Journal, American Bar Association Journal. And basically what they're doing for me is they're collecting a bunch of blogs. So when a respected organization is collecting blogs, again, I'm going to look at the blog and try to figure out what their bias might be, but to me that's a little bit more of an endorsement, so I'm going to have a little more confidence in what that blog might say, or any of these blogs might say. And one nice thing I find by going through the ABA is just scrolling down, is this ERISA lawyer blog? And the main reason I think it's interesting is it's New York, and that we know that's our jurisdiction. Now, there's no guarantee I was going to find a New York blog, but since I did, I'm going to take a look. And the thing about a blog, of course, is the blogger is going to post on whatever random interest in his or her area that he or she wants, which obviously may or may not be my topic. So what I might want to do is search. Now sometimes you're lucky and you find these search engines within the website, and go ahead and try it out. Sometimes they work great, sometimes they don't. And this is one of those advanced Google tricks that I promised to show you, and we'll be using this quite a lot. This is one of my favorite. And again, that search box may work, but I find these searches within blogs to be sometimes fine and sometimes not very reliable. So here's my Google trick. Now, since I am using Google Chrome, I can do a Google search within the search, the web address box. If you're using a different browser, you just go to your Google search, and what you do is you type in the word site, S-I-T-E, colon, I'm sorry, and then you copy and paste whatever the web address, the URL is the blog. Since I'm plugging it right in there because this is Google Chrome, I don't have to copy and paste anything, it's already there. And then after my web address, I search whatever it is I want to search. So if I want to search for, actually, you know what I want to do? I'm sorry. I want to go to the website first, because right now I'd be searching the ABA Journal blog site, and I don't want to do that. So down here, now that I've clicked on this, if I go to the website, and you can see up here, I'm no longer at the ABA Journal website, I'm at the ERISA Lawyer blog. So this is actually where this ERISA Lawyer about New York issues. And actually here, as I look, I don't even see any search box. So this is even better that I know this, because I'm not even sure I could search this blog if I wanted to, which I do. So again, S-I-T-E, colon. And then after the web address, and Google remembered I did this earlier. Sometimes it's good, sometimes a little creepy, Google. But anyway, I go ahead and search, and Google recognizes that as, hey, I want to search just that website, web address, those for whatever words I just gave Google, which is HMO liability. So here you see, again, I'm all at that ERISA Lawyer blog, ERISA Lawyer blog, ERISA Lawyer blog. And these are all entries within the blog with my terms. So this works for any website, whether or not it has a search engine or not. You can search it by, again, using the web address with the word S-I-T-E, colon, web address, space, and then whatever your search term is. Questions? Okay. I'm sorry. Another Google trick. So there's that ABA Journal. Another Google trick and resource is research guides. A lot of librarians, myself included, like to sit down and make research guides in various areas of the law. As we work with them, we become knowledgeable of the resources, and we want to share that expertise. So you will find a lot of these research guides at, again, educational institutions. So you see Georgetown comes up. We have them here at Hofstra. I'll show you where those are when we go to the Hofstra webpage. But honestly, here at Hofstra, we don't have one on ERISA, because as I keep on telling you, I'm not an expert, and none of my colleagues are either. So I might want to check out. And the nice thing about these research guides is they cull out the recommended. So somebody had asked me, well, how do I know if a treatise is any good? And that's a tough question, because you don't want to spend hours and hours reading it and making a determination. One way to find that good treatise is by looking at a research guide, so that you know that someone who's looked at these resources in this particular area recommends this particular title. And so you can see what one looks like. And a lot of libraries use this same system called LibGuides, and so they all kind of look the same. So here are some recommended treatises on ERISA, and here's talking about ERISA secondary sources. So if you know you have this ERISA question, you want to get a handle on exactly what this preemption is, and is there any way we can get out of it? Quick and dirty search on Google, and here are some recommendations for different research guides and a good research guide, at least a good legal research guide, will tell you if it's on Lexis, Westlaw, and possibly Bloomberg. Now again, there may be cost issues, but again, now that you know about this, looking at research guides, it's a very quick way to get some good resources on a particular topic, if you can find a research guide on it. Now another good place to start your research, and again, start or perhaps after you get to know a topic a little better, and actually I would say this is when you have a better sense of the topic and what some of the legal issues are, and that is to go to legal newspapers. And I'm going to Lexis Advance for a reason, and that is that the legal newspaper in New York that has great articles, and if you're lucky to find one on your issue, will give you a great jump start on what the law is in New York. It's the New York Law Journal. I don't know if you've heard about it already. Certainly if you've been working somewhere in a firm in New York, you probably have. You can get alerts from the New York Law Journal. They're old-fashioned email alerts. I don't know if they do any other technology. And actually that's free, although actually getting into the articles costs money. You can access the New York Law Journal on Lexis, not on Westlaw, not on Bloomberg. Lexis has exclusive rights to New York Law Journal. So what I might want to do is search either legal newspapers overall, or I might just want to search the New York Law Journal. And what Lexis has that Westlaw and Bloomberg does not is that this exclusive access they have is not just with the New York Law Journal, but it's with publisher of many different legal newspapers across the country. You might have heard of American Lawyer, National Law Journal. These are all published by a company called American Lawyer Media, ALM, whatever it stands for, American Lawyer Media, American Law Media, doesn't matter. And ALM has an exclusive deal with Lexis. Now, ALM used to have an exclusive deal with Westlaw, so whenever the one with Lexis expires with ALM, they may move over to Westlaw or to Bloomberg or give up altogether and rely on their own website, which is a nightmare, just as an aside. So you don't know. So it's good to keep up. If you find that you use that newspaper a lot, it's good to keep up and see which service, because if it's on your plans, again, you don't have to pay extra for it, it's a great resource to have. So there are any number of ways of getting to it on Lexis Advance, and we'll be going over this again in a little while, but to get to a specific source on Lexis, and actually in Westlaw as well, is again, you just type it in, and you will see add source as filter, so I go ahead and click on that, and you see one filter, and then I can plug in my search. You've all seen me struggle with typing, so I won't do that again unless you really are dying to see New York Law Journal. Okay. Let's move on to a different type of resource. It's again called a current awareness resource, and a couple of you have asked me, all right, all these expensive secondary sources on Lexis and Westlaw, how can I find reliable quality secondary sources that don't cost so much? Some institutions, firms, government, certainly law schools, and wherever else you might be working, may or may not subscribe to a number of other types of online legal research databases. And we'll be taking a look at one of them, and they are great sources for secondary sources. And one reason is that when you subscribe to most of these, they are, like Bloomberg, flat fee. So if your firm, government, organization, wherever you're working, subscribes to BNA, you can search BNA to your heart's content and not worry about what's in my plan, what's not in my plan, how long, all of this. And BNA is particularly useful for very specialized areas of the law, especially highly regulated ones. BNA is one of the go-to sources, for instance, for tax. And it actually is not a bad source for our particular area, as we will see in a moment. So here I am at the Law Library's homepage. But what happens is your institution subscribes, and there are any number of different ways you get there. Here at Hofstra, to get to BNA, you start at the library's homepage. You can search for it here, but honestly, there are a whole bunch of BNA titles. I never remember exact syntax of the title, so I like to go to our topic list. And I do that because I can either look by topic, or I happen to know that we have just all of the BNAs here on the side, under the BNA link on the side. And then I know list of products by subject, so I can get a topic list of BNA. I'll explain why BNA is interesting in just a moment when you can see it. So I can just scroll down and I see, oh look, employee benefits. Here's ERISA litigation tracker. Well, I'm not quite sure I'm ready to track existing litigation yet. I'm not that knowledgeable yet, but I have learned that it comes under the overall pension and benefits area of the law. So let's take a look at the pension and benefits reporter. Okay, now what happened here? Because I'm on a laptop, it is asking me to authenticate remotely. I know we're at Hofstra, but just the way the wireless networks are set up here, and I actually don't understand the technology, and it doesn't matter because it's going to happen to you too most likely, on your laptop here or at home. So I could be in California right now, and I would get this exact same screen. I would type in my name, and I would type in my 700 number, or your 701, or whatever it is these days, so 700. I'll keep my fingers crossed. Ta-da! I got there. Okay, so here's the BNA Pension Benefits Reporter, authenticated remotely. And what BNA did in the old-fashioned print world, which I think will help you understand what you're looking at now, is every week it would come out with a newsletter, old-fashioned paper, and it would get distributed around the law firm to anybody who practiced in that area. And the more senior and important you were, the higher you were to the top of the list. Nice with online now, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And it give you highlights of news, what's going on. It might give you highlights of court opinions that either were just heard by the Supreme Court, arguments, or other court decisions that just came down. Any states that might be considering legislation in your area, again, depending on the area of law. Now, with online capabilities, we can search these. What BNA also does now is it also gives practice guides and a little more in-depth sorts of resources, sorts of discussions on your particular area. So, if we put in, let's see, okay, so you can see mostly news reports with my particular and if you wanted to take a look, let's see if any of them look particularly, none of them look particularly state for health mandates. That state liability. Okay, actually, I'm going to try liability. So again, what you want to do, if one doesn't look good, and again, I'm not going to spend hours on BNA, maybe it doesn't have anything useful, but I'm going to try a couple of the different areas that we've talked about. Okay, so here it does talk about ERISA at 30, history of the ERISA loophole regulation of health plans. It's a little bit old, it was 2004, but again it might give me some of the basis so I can understand this a little bit better. And it highlights my search terms, so it tells me the scope of the coverage. You can see it cites to a lot of different sections within ERISA. It talks about preemption, so it's going to give me, again, background to help me understand what all this preemption concept is. Talks about tests in there. I don't know if they're important or not. And again, here's that reference, Aetna Health v. Davila. So it turns out the Supreme Court found that actions alleging HMO's refusal to cover certain medical expenses violate this law in Texas. And so I'm definitely going to want to find out more about that Aetna case. It was a Supreme Court case with similar facts. Yes, it was Texas and had to do with Texas law, but it's likely to be important. And so we see history and development of ERISA claims procedures. So it's also talking about, okay, how do we issue an ERISA claim if it is preempted? So we know that we might not be able to get into state court because it might be preempted by ERISA, but we still want to think about whether or not we have a claim to bring in federal court, and this is going to explain that a little bit for us as well. So even though this is current awareness, and although it's supposed to be current, this is kind of old, it's giving us some background, it's giving us some ideas. Again, part of our research is not only to see what the law is out there, but to see what some of the possible claims we might make, whether we are figure out whether we are preempted or not, figure out what legal theories might be out there. Okay, so these are some of the different areas where you can either start, or perhaps when you have a little more sense of what you're looking at. See, again, if we didn't know about ERISA preemption, we couldn't have found out about this. In these current awareness sources, these are also where you will probably wind up at the end of your research process, because at the end you want to see what changes have happened since whatever resources I've checked. So we will be coming back to these and coming full circle later on in the semester. So what I'd like to do now for a few minutes, and I'll see if I can figure out a way to help you out, is just to have you do a quick workshop. Just a few quick, easy questions. I ask you to choose your own topic, so this is why I had asked you first class. Oh, that's a good idea. Ask you the first class if there was a paper you were writing. So by all means choose that. If not, choose whatever topic you like. And I will ask you to turn these in. Know that I'm not going to grade them, but they give me a sense of what you're understanding from what I presented, perhaps what you're not understanding, any questions you might have. So go ahead and fill it out. I'm just going to wander around, and if you have questions on how to access any of this stuff. Oh, actually, I realized I didn't tell you about LawProf blogs. So I'll do that now while you're thinking about it. LawProf blogs is just a suite of blogs that law professors. And the reason I think that it's worthwhile to mention separately is that if you're doing legal research, probably there's a professor out there who's interested in some part of your area of law. So it's not a bad way to find a blog in your particular area. And basically I just Googled LawProf blogs, got to the site here, and can scroll down and see what they've got. And actually a couple of our professors here participate in a couple of these blogs. So that's another way of finding a blog as well. So as I said, I'm just going to wander around. I don't want to hover over you, especially today. So if you have questions, just kind of.
Can I leave a very narrow issue that I'm actually dealing with, or is that not going to be that?
Give it a try. Don't spend too much time worrying about your issue, then I'd actually like to. use your favorite class from last semester, or your favorite class this semester, or your favorite class 3 semesters ago. Again, don't spend too much time learning about relevance, which I know is contrary to good practice. The point of this exercise is just to start using some of these resources. Okay, I thought I'd restarted it. Okay, so news would be one type, although as you saw, what we saw was actually a little bit more in depth than a brief news. I'm going to just put in a quick search that will hopefully bring up a whole lot of different types of stuff. Okay, so the products. You will also sometimes get things called practice guides. Again, it depends on the particular. You'll get something called BNA Insights, which are more in-depth. I wouldn't say scholarly because they're more prepared by practitioners for practitioners, but there'll be different lengths and intended audiences. So there'll be the quick, just, hey, here's a case and a paragraph long, or it will be, here's a more in-depth explanation like we were looking at before of what ERISA at 30 and the issues that came up and some interesting cases and the statute sections. And again, depending on the product you're looking at, you'll get different, our search results just said news, but sometimes you'll get different links with different types of search results. So if you're, for instance, if you look at tax, you're going to get all sorts of funky different types of resources, portfolios. You'll see BNA is big into portfolios, which are in the old days were little booklet length discussions of a particular issue. So that booklet length being relevant because it's a lot more in depth than a page or two. Any other questions? Okay. I am going to, as promised, dive into treatises. You saw the screencast. Were there any questions? As I said, I will try to answer the ones you raised in the screencast questions, the think section. We talked a little bit, some of you had asked along the way, how do you find treatises? How do you find treatises if Lexis and Westlaw are too expensive? So one of the ways you saw was through the library catalog, and the library catalog will give you reference to where to find the treatise in the library. It might be an ebook or online treatise. And actually the answer, I think, Justin, it was you. The ebooks, you can download some of them on your Kindle. It totally depends on the publisher and what the publisher allows. So you can, when you get to whatever ebook and whatever system it has, you just need to look around and see where the download and see if Kindle is one of the options. And ebook is actually one of the very much evolving technology as the competition is out there and people get tablets of all different types and all different file types like Kindle and EPUB and what's the one I have? Overlook. Actually, ebooks are interesting, and we'll talk about this in a couple of classes. You can get it, actually, don't forget your public library. And I don't mean, heaven forfend, traveling to your public library. I mean, you all, wherever you live, can sign into your public library and get some useful resources. And we'll talk about that, as I said, in a couple classes. So you saw the screencast, so hopefully you appreciate why treatises can be useful, and you now, all I saw, understand that you would look at treatises for in-depth explanations. You can use treatises to start, but I would tend to do that only if you were more familiar with the area. How do you find them? Well, we've already saw from way back. Here's our ALR. You might get references from another secondary source like ALR. You saw in hopefully some of the research guides you were looking at. I pointed out the ERISA research guide just earlier with references to treatises. Library catalog, we'll be looking at that, as I said, next class. There is, of course, Google Books. I know a couple of you, or several of you, know about Google Scholar. Did you know about Google Books? Google Books is this initiative. The funky thing about Google is you never know what it's going to pull up where. So you can do a search and you'll probably get the articles from Google Scholar, but you won't necessarily get the books that are available on Google Books, and I don't know why that is. One of these days I'll figure it out. So what I do if I'm looking, if I want something really in-depth, is I will tell Google, find me Google Books, because I never remember what the web address is. I really should. And then I can search for Google Books. So I might want to search, I could search for ERISA, any number of different ways of searching. So I had decided the other day, let's try health plans liability. Now the cool thing about Google Books is you get all these books. The less cool thing about Google Books is you may or may not have access to the book that I just got the link for. So this book, see, it jumps me into the middle of this book, which is actually kind of cool. I may or may not be able to scroll through the whole book and look at it. It may be that there are copyright issues. Google has been through a whole series of litigation with regard to this Google Books project, because people who write books generally want to get paid for them, and if it's available on Google Books, people won't pay for them. So you may get excerpts from Google Books and not the whole thing because of the copyright considerations. But it's still kind of cool. Maybe I can see enough to say, ooh, this looks really good. I'm going to figure out where I can get this book, even if I have to go to Amazon or wherever to buy it. So that's another way to at least discover the availability of books, treatises, and maybe even get access to it. A couple of people asked, how do I know if it's a treatise or not? And I hate to say that's the answer to that question is you know it when you know it when you see it. The old Judge Powell. Basically, the title, a treatise isn't going to say treatise in the title. They used to back in the 1800s. So typically, if I see a title that has the word treatise in it, I think, oh no, this is too old to be useful, unless I want something from the 1800s, which is rare. How do I know if it's a treatise? Basically, it's in depth. It's on a particular topic, like health plan, essentials of managed healthcare. Managed healthcare is a pretty specific topic. Sexual harassment would be a pretty specific topic. Seafood marketing would be a pretty specific topic. And I know it's not one of the following. In other words, it's not a periodical, a newspaper that comes out every day, or a law review that comes out 4 times a year, 3 times a year, however much. I know it's not a case reporter. Cases are not treatises. Cases are cases, as you know. I know it's not statutes. So pretty much I eliminate what it's not, and it looks like it's a title, as I said, that goes in depth on a particular topic by an expert. Not a great answer, but unfortunately that's about the best answer that there is. So that's kind of the what are treatises and how I know what they are, places to find them, Google Books, references from some of the other sources, research guides that we've looked at, encyclopedias, ALR. There are our favorite databases. And next time, as promised, I will talk a lot more in depth about pricing. So for now, let's assume that we don't have to worry about that. Number of different ways to find really great treatises on Westlaw Next. For just start typing. So we know we're interested in ERISA. Let's see what comes up. Looking for this, pension benefits, so statutes, courts, and rules. I know that's not a treatise. Secondary sources, or view more. Texts and treatises. That's what I like about. And what's interesting, notice I typed in the word ERISA, and Westlaw knows that ERISA comes under pension, the overall topic. And that's what I mean by broadening your scope. So ERISA is fairly specific, but pension and retirement benefits is a broader topic under which ERISA falls. So type it in and take a look and browse through any of these treatises, practice and litigation. Again, the nice thing about Westlaw Next is I can choose one title or I can just search them all. If for whatever reason you don't get that nice text and treatises come up when you type in here because you didn't choose quite the right word, you can browse looking for treatises. Just click on secondary sources. Certainly treatises, I tend not to go state specific unless I really know that I need, if I'm interested in New York family law and Delaware isn't going to do it, I'm going to look for New York family law treatises. And then I can browse by topic here, but then you have to figure out where that might fall. And as you saw, Westlaw Next does a pretty good job at figuring that out for us, but you can't count on it all the time. So actually, let's go back and take a look at one of these treatises. So I'm going to go back to our texts and treatises, and I'm going to choose one of them because we've talked about updating even online. So here's this ERISA practice and litigation. How do I know how up to date it is? Once you choose a particular topic, there's this little I link, and that's generally the answer for most, certainly Lexis and Westlaw. Look for that little I, because that little I is going to tell you more about the resource. So database updated January 2015. Excellent. And that's pretty much, I have now updated this treatise. Now I'm going to want to see what information it refers me to, and of course I want to shepherdize or key cite my cases and make sure the statutes are up to date. But I can now search this or browse. Again, remember the table of contents. Searching is great, but maybe I want to see if any of these headings will help me really pinpoint my particular area of research. Any questions on Westlaw? Moving over to Lexis, pretty much the same. So again, type in and see, and Lexis gives us this possibility of add source as filter, so it's listing ERISA principles of employee benefits law. I could click on this if that's how I want to narrow to my topic. If I'm not finding anything that way, then I might want to browse. And the browse on Lexis is actually kind of useful. So if I want to, I can browse by topic. So I can, again, sort of like on Westlaw, we looked at the topics. I can see if I can figure out what the best topic here. Or I can also search for topic if I don't want to drill down. Or I can, again, search sources. And I can use any of those, or again, I can see what's available by typing in. And this will search for ERISA, not necessarily just the first word, but throughout the title. Again, you want to find that I link to get a sense. Again, we're getting a whole long list. Not all of these are treatises, so American University Law Review is obviously not a treatise. When you see CLE, that stands for Continuing Legal Education. That's something you're going to get to know very well once you graduate, because you have CLE requirements in just about any state that you're going to be practicing in, but I know for sure New York. So what happens is these companies produce these CLEs and then produce the material from the CLEs that sometimes wind up online. And they can actually be pretty useful. And honestly, don't worry whether they're called a treatise or not. They probably are mostly like treatises, but CLEs can be useful as well. Okay, I'm going to jump. Any questions about finding sources? And this, by the way, is also how you find any source on Lexis, not just treatises. I'm focusing on treatises because that's the topic of the day. Any questions about Lexis? Okay, so here on Bloomberg, there's just the links right here, books and treatises from the very front page, and you can kind of scroll down or search if you wind up searching. So basically, it's just searching everything. And it's one thing we won't do today, but I will highlight next time, is doing a search first and then narrowing once you've done your search, which we've done a little bit of, but we'll go into far more depth with that next time. And I'm sure you're familiar with it just having used Lexis and Westlaw, and whether you've used Bloomberg or not. Bloomberg also has what they call the Go bar, but again, you type in and Bloomberg guesses what you're looking for. I find this a little less, I'm less successful with this than I am on Lexis or Westlaw. So with Bloomberg, what I tend to do, actually I don't even narrow to the books and treatises, I do what I just suggested, which is I do my search first, and then I narrow later and see what resources it has that looks useful. The BNA law reports are mostly what you searched when you were doing the other platform of BNA. So if you do wind up at a place that subscribes to Bloomberg, you can see that material, but as I said, it's going to look a whole lot different. So if I go down to employee benefits and that pension benefits reporter, just so you can see what that looks like. Again, we're getting off the topic of treatises here, but since that question came up, and again, I'm just doing a quick and dirty search here, but it's pretty much what it looks like. So it's got the current highlights, and then you can search more in depth. And last but not least, we are going to go back to the library's homepage. And another part of the answer, how do I find secondary sources that aren't super expensive Lexis Westlaw? Excuse me again. In addition to BNA, there are other legal database vendors out there. One of them is CCH IntelliConnect. CCH is a legal publisher, Commerce Clearinghouse, and they're now migrating much of their material online. CCH, kind of like BNA, tends to go very highly regulated areas of the law, so employment law, tax again, and you can see the list here. This particular interface is not my favorite, but when an organization subscribes to CCH, it again is flat rate. So you can flail around a little bit without worrying about racking up costs. You can do as many searches, good searches, bad searches, and different searches, pull up as many documents as you want and not worry about it. So you can just see, okay, where's my topic, and see what comes up. So you want to be aware, again, when you go wherever you wind up working, either in the summer, full-time, and find out what's available beyond Lexis or Westlaw, because a lot of these other options are going to be flat rate and are going to tend to be where, especially if you're lucky enough to be in a place with a librarian, the librarian's going to say, hey, check out CCH first before you go diving into Lexis and Westlaw, especially if it's got the area of law that you want. And the other database vendor, we'll talk about Hein Online next time. Another one is RIA. RIA is mostly tax, but since someone who's interested in tax, I thought I'd point it out. And they have a lot of, RIA again has a lot of material, tax materials, but treatises. Oh, this is one of those. RIA and the Hofstra servers don't always get along, so you have to just say, yeah, just get me there. So you say advanced and please proceed. I don't know why that is. But we get here, and you can see treatises. Now, WGNL is just a publisher name, so I know that doesn't help you at all, but you can get a sense of some of the treatises available. And again, this is very subject-specific, and there are other subject-specific databases, again, depending on where you work and the area of practice. If you're in a very specialized area like patent law, there may be patent databases that they subscribe to, and you want to know about those. And again, whether it's treatises or any other type of secondary sources or really primary sources, those databases are really good to know if you do have access to them, because again, they are can be an alternative to Lexis Westlaw from a cost perspective, and might actually also be better suited to your needs because they're specific to that area of law. I'm going to call it there. It is 5:30. As I suspected, we weren't going to get through treatises today, so we will continue next time and then proceed with talking about costs and advanced searching and law reviews and get as far as we can on that, and we will catch up by class 6 or 7. Any questions? Oh, and there is another screencast available. It's on restatements. I'm actually not going to talk about restatements too much in class. Take a look at it when you can and answer, again, pretty simple, straightforward questions. On your syllabus, I asked you to do it by next class. If you don't get to it by next class, that's okay. Get to it by, I would say, the end of our secondary sources discussion, and you'll be fine. Any other questions? Then I will see you next Tuesday. Have a great weekend. Yeah. RIA. I'm going to go back to the library homepage. Now again, the library homepage, you can search for it here, and a lot of people like to search. But again, I'm not, so if you plug in RIA, it probably will come up. My tendency, just because I know I'll get it this way, I go to topic list. I know RIA is tax, and then RIA is here. So if you don't know it's tax, then you're probably better off searching. So actually, let's see how well the search works. So the other thing is it came up, how did that happen?
you were collecting these.
Yeah, if you could just leave them at the end.
The first
So
one.
here, it's the first one.
Yeah.
The other thing I don't like about the search is my tendency is always to click on this, and if you click on the title, it gives you the description. You have to click on the click here, and that's just how this search function was designed, which, not my intuition, it might make perfect sense to you.